I'm here with the Grammy Award-winning composer, conductor, Academy Award nominated conductor as well, amazing musician, Lucas Richman, who I have worked with as a conductor a number of times, which was so much fun. I still remember, actually, I remember the performances, but I also really remember the after party in Knoxville. That was so much fun. And it was just such a pleasure working with you. And when I was putting together another one of these solo cello concerts spanning 300 years of composition, I found your Stream of Consciousness #2 and literally fell in love with it like in an instant.
Wow.
It spoke to me. And in many ways, it really spoke to me in this pandemic, particularly actually, because I found it so haunting. But then also there was a life force in it, in the middle section, you know, that really felt like that's what we're all doing. We're just trying to survive and overcome this horrible worldwide pandemic that, you know, we're going to come out at the end stronger and better. But, and so it really appealed to me. And so I really wanted to talk to you about like what inspired you to write this piece? What were you trying to put into this piece? And also just as a composer, like, how do you start when you I want to know the process.
Okay. Well, Sarah, it's great to talk with you. And I've always loved your playing, and I love your enthusiasm. I mean, a composer cannot ask for more than to have somebody be enthusiastic about their music. So
to be enthusiastic about, let me tell you.
So thank you. The piece came about, I've been writing music for a very long time. And when I came out of UCLA as an undergrad, I was a violin major.
I know.
And but I pretty much did everything during my UCLA years but practice for my major. And one of the things I was doing was I was composing a lot. And after graduating, I teamed up with several friends of mine to form a group of called the Low-Cal Composers Ensemble.
Oh, I love that. Low-Cal.
And this was based on another group that my composition teacher, Roger Borland, had started when he was in Boston. It was Composers in Red Sneakers.
Oh, I like that too. That's good. Yeah.
So being in Southern California, we were the Low-Cal Composers Ensemble.
Right.
And one of our notable alumni from the group is Jay Kagi, who we graduated in the same year from UCLA. So I actually wrote several things for Jake, but we had a group of musicians in the Southern California area that we would write for. And one of my dearest friends is David Lowe, a cellist in the LA area. And I ended up writing a lot of things for David, a lot of chamber music. This particular piece comes out, I have to, because we have time to chat, so I'm going to tell you a little more backstory of what's in my head and what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And there are two particular pieces that when I think of the cello, I think of the Brahms E minor cello sonata. There's something that I just, the second I hear do dee do dee do,
I just got goosebumps. Thinking about it. I know, it's so rich.
There's nothing better than those, you know, if you could just eat those moments, you know.
Right.
And
you start a second below that.
Yes, with my piece. So also during this time when I was at UCLA and then graduating, I was very involved in musical theater. And one of the shows
Both
that
your parents were actors, right?
Yes. Yeah. My father was an actor, and my mom, they met in summer stock, and so we were always surrounded by the arts and music and theater. So I was very involved in musical theater, and one of the shows that I had a chance to be musical director for was A Little Night Music.
All right.
And I don't know if you know the show, but there's a character called named Henrik.
Yes,
And,
yeah.
and Henrik is a very frustrated young man. He's in love with the new wife of his father, the stepwife.
Right.
I mean stepmother, who's very young, and he's a cellist. So he actually the character plays cello on stage while singing do do di Henrik, di da da Henrik later. So clearly Stephen Sondheim had in his head the Brahms, but Henrik is actually starts out on C sharp.
Oh wow, interesting.
So it's in C sharp minor.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So that low rising pattern from a low note on the C string of the cello is just something that was part of my consciousness. Now, I told you that I was a violinist. These hands are not a violinist's hands.
Yeah, they're more cellist or violist. Yeah.
Well, I think I should have been a cellist, but I would have loved to play the cello. That's not what I chose in middle school, in beginning strings in 7th grade.
Right. In middle school, very few people pick the cello because it's just so darn big.
It's hard to take home in the car.
Or the school bus, or walk home with it. I used to drag it behind me like it was like a sled or something.
So, but playing a violin and then getting up I could never get my fingers close enough to get.
Right. Yeah. I remember once playing with Felix Gallimere, who had like these massive, fat, big fingers. And he was like 80 something at the time. And I remember looking at his left hand and realizing that they now, after, a lifetime of playing violin, they had like dips on the tops of each finger where the other finger would fit in so that he could play those little tiny notes up there.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. Yeah.
So the cello, I absolutely adore the cello, and it really, for me, is the closest thing to the human voice.
I do too.
With the range of it, and as a guy, it has, it is my range. It's my singing voice.
Right. Yeah.
So in writing a piece, a solo work for cello, I'm starting from that place. Now, writing, when you begin a piece, like it's very daunting because staring at a white page is like, what do you do? And I came up with a very silly little system that I've used in many, many of my pieces to just generate some kind of musical material that is intrinsically wedded to the thematic or the idea of the piece or the person for whom I'm writing the music.
Right.
And the way I do that is I take the name, somebody's name, and I use the letters of the name, and I translate that into notes.
Right.
I'm going to share my screen right now, and show you what that looks like. And let's do that right now.
It's my favorite part of technology. Oh, good. Here we go.
So the 7 notes on the musical scale are A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Then you've got all these extra letters. So how does D and A make sense, because those are in the musical scale, D and A. But what do you do with a V? Well, you just go down the graph, and here we have V.
Right.
So V becomes an A.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have D, A, A,
mm-hmm.
and then I is here. I becomes a B. So we have D, A, B, D. D, A, B, D. Now, I could just use the white keys on the piano, F for D, A, B, D, but it's a little limiting. So I take some artistic license and use the accidentals, the going down a half step or up a half step. And in this case, I decided to do D, A flat, A, B flat, D flat. And then I went one further on the music and I translate this into the enharmonic because D flat is the same thing as a C sharp. And if you don't know music, that's okay. I'm going to show you now the music itself.
Cool.
This is the music. And here is D, A flat, which is now G sharp.
Which is the same note.
The same note, A, B flat, C sharp. And that becomes the basis. Those 5 notes are the basis for this stream of consciousness number 2.
Before you take that away, I just want to ask you one question.
Yeah.
About the comma that is right there always in the figure.
Yes.
Because I found that as I was learning it, that comma made the music so much more haunting and searching. Like that comma created a sense that you're searching for exactly what it is that you're trying to say in a way. And so I interpreted it that way because it's unusual to see commas so often in the same area of of a motif, And so here you go, da, 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 and comma. And then here you're playing basically exactly the same notes, slightly different rhythm and no comma because now instead of having a full beat for that last note and then the comma, you have it only an eighth note. So now it feels like it's propelling somewhere else.
Right. In the second bar, it does go on. But the idea here is that I mentioned musical theater. The voice and song has been a very big part of my my understanding of music. We all have the song within us. And we all have the breath within us. And when you play music, you have to breathe. A lot of string players don't take advantage of the fact that they breathe.
I know, that's how I teach. I was just talking to someone about that. I was like, would you sing that phrase that way?
Right.
No. I said, then don't play it that way.
Right.
It has to sound natural. And if you were singing it, you would not put a break right there before the climax. You go to the climax and you find the breath afterwards, But that was like always the highest compliment when reviewers talk about my performances and they say that like I approach the Dvorak concerto like a fine opera singer. And I'm
perfect.
Like, yes,
perfect.
That's exactly what I'm trying to do.
Because it's an aria. I mean, that second movement is an aria.
My gosh, yeah.
So, wind players, brass players, and singers need to breathe in order to produce sound. And as string players, we need to breathe too. Otherwise, the music, well, what happens? If you don't breathe, what happens?
Well, you asphyxiate the music.
You die.
Yeah, exactly.
and so the music dies if you don't breathe and you don't infuse your music making with breath.
Yeah.
When I teach conducting, that my conducting students will all remember, that Lucas always says, breathe, breathe, breathe. That you cannot begin a phrase without breathing. If you can't just come down, because it's lifeless. It's the motion of when I conduct, but if you do not breathe, you're not participating in the music.
Right.
So
it's a living, breathing thing. The music is alive. It is a living, breathing thing. And so
absolutely,
if you don't breathe with it, it becomes dead. Emotionally, it becomes dead.
Right.
That's so interesting because I feel that way so much. Like to me, when I play any music, no matter when the period that it comes from, to me, it feels so topical to just this moment because it's so alive. And the great composers understand that like this music is timeless because it's specifically to us. It's alive now, today. Yeah. Which is probably why I felt in the middle of a pandemic that this piece was so perfect for the pandemic because it's alive, you know? Yeah.
So each of the phrases, it begins with that a swoop up and a lingering, like what's to come. It's a thought that's unfinished, and then we breathe and think it again. And the idea of stream of consciousness, it was, the intent was, when you say something, when you say something, when you say something, and you do it a few times, it becomes to have even more meaning, and you have different ways of expressing yourself by using the same notes, but changing them around.
Yes, and it's also, interestingly, I find I'm pairing this with the C major suite, because I'm going through all 6 suites. And, and just as the prelude of the C major suite starts with a descending C major scale, which immediately signifies to human beings, even if they know nothing about music, it's the end. And he starts with that, then weaves this incredibly rich tapestry of emotion and sound and a story, and ends then with the exactly same downward descending C major scale, but because of what's passed before, it sounds completely different.
Right.
And I found with your piece, with the da capo coming back, it's very different after what has happened between the first time it's stated and the last time it's stated.
That's so great. That's so great.
And I love that. That to me is a mark of a great composer.
Oh. So to clarify for your listeners, the piece is in an ABA form. So there's this slow first part and then the second part, the B, is much more vigorous and chaotic and all this stuff. And then the first A is repeated at the end. So we go back to the top, da capo, to the head, to the beginning of the piece.
Yeah, and it's it has a very different feel, even though it's exactly the same notes.
And yes, it is the same notes. And I'll just share the screen so people can see that that portion. And here we are. You sing, there we go, right there. So again, there are notes, D, G sharp, A, B flat, C sharp.
Right.
Now, when we all have different influences, and I was thinking about before we were going to have this conversation, I thought, what would it have been that I would have had this sense of motion in this part, and it just kind of clicked. It's a silly little piece, but Fiocco Allegro. There's a piece called Allegro by Fiocco. It's kind of a intermediate violin piece, and it's a perpetual motion. So that it just keeps on going. It goes, and doesn't stop. It just keeps on going, and by the end of it, you're,
and that's fun too,
Yeah.
And I did really love that in the B section, the fast section, you're still working with the exact same sonorities. You're adding more on too, but it's very unmistakably the same motif, just played much faster, with a lot more notes.
Exactly, and utilizing the full range of the instrument as well. So my goal was to just show off the instrument, and I will say that some of this was like, in a way, kind of needling my friend David to try this.
I remember once a composer was doing an arrangement of the Gershwin 3 solo piano preludes for my trio. And he kept faxing me snippets saying, "Is this possible? And I kept saying, for me, yes.
Right.
But if you want a lot of trios to play it, that I'm not so sure.
Exactly. Exactly.
This is
Yeah.
tough, And he was like, no, I'm keeping it then. Yeah. And I'm like, great. I just like let myself in for a lot of practicing.
Well, the funny thing is, the stuff that we think is so playable now, a century ago was deemed unplayable, like the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto.
Yes. And
Originally, was it? I can't remember.
I heard Joachim told.
Yes, Joachim. Yeah, said that, no.
It's not possible, right?
Yeah.
Well, but then that the other thing that I'm thinking about is so for one of these concerts I did one of the Paganini caprices for solo violin on cello.
Oh, wow.
And I remember thinking as I was doing some of these massive stretches and stuff, I was like, man, I would have loved to have seen Paganini's left hand. Because, and I remember performing in Genoa, Italy, which is where he was born. I went to the American embassy there, I guess, and there was this huge statue of Paganini, and his hands just looked like monsters. And then on this same program with your piece and the third suite, I'm playing a Piatti Caprice number 7, and this was written in 1820, basically, around 1820. So 200 years ago. And I'm stretching, I have massive hands. I mean, my hands are like twice as big as my face. They're just so huge. It's like I have some sort of weird mutation. I'm stretching like at the peak using my pinky and my thumb and like going over all 4 strings. And I'm thinking, how did Piatti play this 200 years ago? He had to have been he probably was my height, 5'6".
But also, weren't the instruments smaller? Weren't there certain...
a little bit smaller, and the strings were much, much, much lower than
right
are now, because you weren't playing in these huge halls.
The tension in the string is very different today than it was back then.
Yeah, it's much more stiff, the tension. But still, I was like, I'm just getting it with the very tip of my pinky and my thumb. How did they do that?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do tell you a funny story. I remember the first time I played Beethoven Triple at Avery Fisher Hall, Felix Gallimere again, he came up to me afterwards and he said, when I first played this piece, it wasn't supposed to be in tune. and I know. And I was like, and he said, that was the thing that has most awestruck him in his lifetime is the level of playing. And he said, particularly of cellists in his lifetime, how we've just exploded. And that was such a nice compliment. It was so sweet. But I love that it wasn't supposed to be in tune. And so you do wonder, these guys who wrote these massively difficult pieces, did they actually expect it to be played in tune?
Well, also, with so many pieces being written in string-friendly keys like D major or, A major, C major is not a string-friendly key.
Yeah, there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah, it is much more exposed, and it doesn't. While you have, as a cellist, you've got the open, the low strings, but for the most part, everything is fingered. You can't rely on the overtones as much as you can in other keys.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, it's really interesting. It's fascinating. So now during the pandemic, Lucas, as a cellist, I can practice every day and hear this gorgeous music and have my soul uplifted. And I can record these concerts and stream them and feel some connection to my audience and to humanity and to the joy and beauty that music and making music brings to you. But as a conductor, without an orchestra, so how are you as an artist surviving right now?
It's been very, very tough, honestly, on a creative level. The last time I conducted a full orchestra in front of a full audience was a year ago November.
A year ago November. Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
I conducted the Oslo Philharmonic in music of John Williams.
Mhm.
Uh, and uh, and then it turned out that the Bangor Symphony Orchestra, our January presentation was winds and brass. So we did the Stravinsky's wind instruments,
Right.
symphonies of wind instruments.
Right.
Uh, so that was the last time I conducted a full orchestra, and then the pandemic hit, and it's been forever.
I know. It just
Um,
the longest I've gone without a live. Last concert I had was March 12th in Canada. Flew back to New York. Boom, we shut down. But so I feel blessed that I was just touring really hard right up to the
yeah.
actually with the coronavirus, unbeknownst to me.
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't get a test, and that was insane. I mean, and I was doing everything in my power not to touch anything anyone was touching, not to breathe on anyone.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
mean, I was on stage, and at one point during the concert, I opened my eyes and I could see the stage pulsating up toward me because I was so dizzy. It was unbelievable.
Oh.
But yeah, this has been the longest I've gone without performing since I was maybe 4 years old. In front of an
Well,
audience.
40 years of doing concerts, and my job has been primarily conducting large ensembles of musicians in front of large audiences.
I know, and I miss that energy so much from that way that an audience helped shape the performance with the artist. It's just I really miss that. Yeah.
So what I have been doing is writing a lot more, and creating music for socially distanced circumstances. So
really smart, yeah.
So in fact, for the winter holidays that just passed, I knew that several orchestras were going to be trying to do holiday concerts that they could record and make available for their subscribers. So I created arrangements of smaller ensemble things, and we actually had a lot of people, orchestras around the country, rent from the publishing company. And I've also been, you gotta touch music. So I've been practicing the piano a lot.
Wow, good for you.
And so I've got now a Mozart sonata under my fingers, and
good for you.
And I've been practicing my own piano music, and I'm just kind of working towards recording it.
Oh, good. I look forward to that recording.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that would be really cool. So that's good. Yeah. Well, I have to say that it's just been a pleasure speaking with you, Lucas. I so enjoyed your piece. I can't wait for the audience to hear it.
I can't wait to hear you play it.
Yeah, it's just so great. It's such a great piece, and it's in a nice mix of music that I'm going to be the third suite, the piano 7, Kodai unaccompanied.
Oh, terrific.
So, and it's just, but I really enjoyed it. And it just, I'm now looking through my music files to see if I have any more of your music. Cause I'm like,
well, there are a few more solo cello pieces. So
well, I figured there had to be, since this was Stream of Consciousness #2. I was like, how do I not have #1? It's like, you're #1. So.
Well, #1 is for trumpet, so that won't work. But but I do have other solo cello works.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
If I might, I'll just make a plug. My publishing company is Ledor Group. So ledorgroup.com, LEDORGROUP.com.
Great.
And I've got all the orchestral music, chamber music, all that stuff is there.
Yeah. Well, I am really looking forward to delving into more of your music, Lucas, and I recommend everyone who's listening, check it out. If you're looking for some really like music that speaks immediately to you, this is what his music does. And so
thank you.
It's such a pleasure to talk with you.
Likewise, Sarah. Thank you, and I'm so pleased you're through the woods on your recovery with COVID.
Apparently I have so many antibodies that my doctor was like, you're good to go till the vaccine, and you're going to be last in line for the vaccine because of your age and your no health thing. So you're fine. And I was like, oh, okay.
Good.
I'll go breathe on all my friends and give them antibody breath. right. Well, thanks so much. And I'll talk to you again very soon.
All
Thanks
right.
for
Thank
listening.
you. Thank you. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.